citizens, it's time to set sail with Captain Brant. As a hybrid DPS and healer, Brant works surprisingly well with not just Changli, but also Chixia, Carlotta, and on triple DPS teams. How strong is he and what are his best teams? In this video, I will go over his mechanics and build, as well as teams, rotations, and my polling recommendations. Disclaimer, footage in the video comes from the media server. There might be changes on release, but I will post a comment if anything changes. Here is how Brant works. Brant has two basic attack combos, ground and air. His mid-air attacks deal twice the damage of his ground attacks, and is what you'll want to primarily use. You also get to swing around and be a pirate this way. To get into the air, you can either jump, use his skill, or rely on his intro or liberation, which also puts him into the air. Brant has a 4-stage aerial combo, and he can hold basic attack to spin after each of the first 3 stages. After each stage, he does a small flip which deals some damage and also resets his dodge counter. This makes Brant quite powerful in the air, especially since his mid-air dodges do not reset his combo. Brant's Forte gauge charges up his nuke and is also one of the ways he can heal. Every time you fill 1/4 of the gauge, Brant does a little team-wide heal. When the Forte is full, Brant's resonance skill upgrades into a powerful nuke that accounts for over half his total damage. Using this skill also generates a team-wide shield. Unfortunately, the shield doesn't provide super armor. I will cover the specific healing and shield numbers later in the build section. Oh, and Brant also has a special mechanic. He converts extra energy recharge into attack. For every 1% of ER above 150%, he gains 12 attack, up to a maximum of 1,560. He needs 280% ER to hit the cap, but you don't need to stress about maxing this and can think of it as a cherry on top. Brant's liberation is key to his rotation. It doesn't deal very much damage, but using it heals the team, and it enters Brant into a special Aflame state. This lasts for 12 seconds, and during a flame, Brant's Forte gauge fills twice as fast, and his ER to attack conversion gets a boost. Instead of 12 attack per ER over 150, Brant now gains 20 attack, up to a new maximum of 2,600 attack. This is why Brant always wants to use Liberation at the beginning of his rotation. Brant's intro lets his next mid-air attack start from stage 2, and Brant's outro amplifies the incoming resonator's fusion damage as well as resonance skill damage. Before going over rotations, I want to first go over Brant's build, since his echo setup can change the rotation. For his echoes, you have 2 choices, Tidebreaking Courage or Molten Rift. While Tidebreaking seems tailor-made for Brant, there is a catch. You need 250% ER to activate the 5-piece effect. This is hard to achieve without either his signature or an ER weapon like Overture. The good news is, the old fusion set also works really well regardless of your ER level. Also, since Brant has a very high basic attack damage share, the old Inferno Rider synergizes well with him. The main downside to the fusion set is that your rotation will be slightly slower, as you will see later in the rotation section. While it's unfortunate that Brant's signature set isn't actually best in slot for him in many cases, I think it can also be a good thing, since I know a lot of people, me included, that already have the fusion set farmed, and I'll most likely just use that on him instead. Here's a graphic I made with notes on Brant's different weapons and their echo setups. In general, if you can't hit 250% ER, fusion set will be a lot better. And even if you can hit 250% ER, you can still choose between the two based on your substats and which rotation you prefer. One interesting thing I discovered about Brant's echoes is that because he really benefits from ER, triple ER is actually viable on him, and even potentially ER, and damage bonus. For your echo main stats, you almost always want double ER on your 3-cost echoes. However, if you're over 280% ER, you can switch to a damage bonus one if the substats are better. For substats, you'll want to prioritize crit and crit damage, and then ER, followed by basic attack damage. Unlike other DPSs, attack percent and flat attack are lower priority, since he gets so much flat attack from his ER conversion. For Brant's weapon choices, here's a graphic I made illustrating the differences between his top options. His signature is quite strong as it gives him 77% ER and 48% basic attack damage bonus. However, Camellia's signature is decent as well, and Emerald of Genesis can work as an alternative. In terms of his team comps, since Brant can heal, shield, and deal damage, he ideally plays in a dual or triple DPS lineup without Verena or Shorekeeper. His strongest team will be Sanhua plus Brant plus a third DPS that benefits from his outro buffs. Sanhua is Brant's best support. She deals decent damage herself, and her outro amplifies basic attack damage, which significantly buffs Brant. Rochia can also be a good alternative in AoE environments. Verena or Shorekeeper will be a bit weaker. For your third DPS, Changli is currently the strongest, but surprisingly, Chixia works well too, especially if you have Carlotta's signature on her. So speaking of Carlotta, she's also fairly strong with Brant, as she too benefits from the resonant skill damage amplification. I also tried some triple DPS teams like Brant, Encore, and Changli, as well as Brant, Changli, and Xiangliyao. But while those were fun to play, they were weaker than the Sanhua plus Brant teams, but can be stronger in Whimpering Wastes. Here's a tower rotation for the Sanhua, Brant, and Changli team, with Brant on Tidebreaking Courage. I will go over the rotation for Fusion set right after, so you can see the differences. I like to start with Changli first and use her skill before swapping to Sanhua for her basics into skill, liberation, and then Forte attack. Then I use her echo right before outroing. After Brant's intro, I directly cast liberation to enter him into his aflame state. Then I hold down basic attack to go into his mid-air combo and spins. His aerial combo charges his Forte perfectly, and I use his Forte nuke after his last attack, and use echo right before outroing to Changli. When Changli intros, I can gain 1 stack of Inflamement right away. Then I use the normal Changli rotation to get to 4 stacks of Inflamement before casting her Forte into Liberation into another Forte. And then I use her echo before outroing back to Sanhua. This rotation takes around 27 seconds, which syncs up well with Brant's ultimate cooldown of 24 seconds. You don't want to quick swap during Changli's turn since she needs to remain on field to keep Brant's outro buffs. You also don't need to jump cancel her skill to rush the rotation, since you're not that limited on rotation time here, and you'll lose out on damage that's buffed by Brant. Here is the damage distribution in this team, assuming a well-built Brant and Changli. And now, here's the rotation for Sanhua, Brant, and Changli with Brant on the Fusion set. The main difference is you want to use Inferno Rider as well as his Resonance skill before you start his combo, since Inferno Rider buffs his basic attack damage and Resonance skill activates the 5-piece set bonus. Here, I still start with Changli into Sanhua. However, before finishing her combo, I add in a quick swap to weave in the extra Brant skills. The best time to swap is right after releasing Sanhua's Forte attack. Here, I use Inferno Rider on Brant, followed by skill, and then quickly swap back to Sanhua. When her concerto is full, I use echo and outro. The rest of the rotation is the same as before. I like to weave in Inferno Rider and skill before introing into Brant so he can get a clean buffed rotation without having to break his aerial combos. For those of you that play Chixia, here's a fun rotation I've been using. For Brant's Forte priorities, you'll want to max his Forte circuit first, followed by basic and resonance liberation. Intro and skill will be the lowest priority and do not need to be maxed. In terms of Brant's sequences, here's a graphic showing the damage increases along with some notes. Surprisingly, his S1, S2, and S3 give similar amounts of damage boosts. S2 is the most impactful since it gives him an extra 30% crit rate on his strongest attacks. If you want to invest more into Brant, I recommend his signature over his S1, unless you have Camellia's signature. The signature is a guaranteed pull, increases his damage more, and also makes him easier to build. Keep in mind though, since Brant is usually played in a multi-DPS team, all of these damage increases are effectively halved when you're considering the total team damage. To summarize, Brant is a versatile character with fun grappling attacks. His strengths are that despite being a jack of all trades, his strongest teams are on par with his current top teams. His short rotations and synergy with Sanhua make for a strong combo with any of these characters. Specifically, for those who like Changli but don't enjoy quick swapping, I recommend Brant as her partner. On the flip side, Brant's weaknesses are that he is not a strong hyper carry, since his own damage output isn't very high, and his DPS window is limited by the 12-second of flame buff. Also, versus hyper carry teams where you just need to invest heavily into one character, on the Brant teams you will need to invest into both Brant and your third DPS to reach full potential. In terms of the meta, if you're new to Wuthering waves and lack strong DPSs, I personally recommend pulling for a hyper carry DPS instead. With that said, always remember that nothing is more important than a character you truly like. I think that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Good luck to those pulling for Brant, and see you on stream or in my next video.